TellyCast.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby, and welcome to another TellyCast. My guest this week has won 2 Emmys and created over 60 TV series, running to over 3,500 episodes, including the Chopped franchise. We get to talk about his career and how he develops his ideas and approaches those all-important pitch meetings. Welcome to TellyCast TV format creator Dave Noll from New York-based Keller Noll.
Oh my gosh. First of all, thank you so much. I have listened to the show many times. I've listened to you grill commissioners. I've listened to your MIP reviews. I am honored to be part of this team.
You're part of the firmament now, the back catalogue, which is stretching back through 132 episodes or so now, I think.
I'm particularly proud to represent the U.S. You know, you need some more people from one of the biggest markets in the world.
I agree. You know, the more corporate businesses within the broadcast world are a little bit reticent. Their corporate communications people can be a little bit nervous about going on a podcast. It's all very tame over here, isn't it, Dave?
Not independent show creators.
Yeah.
We'll just say anything. We're good.
One of the reasons why I wanted to speak to you, because obviously you're an incredibly successful TV format creator. This show is all about opinion and insight. And that's about, you know, sharing what you think and what you've learned about the industry in your years in TV. So let's start at that point then. Tell us a little bit about your career and how you came to create over 60 different television series.
I started right out of college at MTV Networks. I applied to 100 different internships in New York City, got an internship at MTV. It was unbelievable.
So it's always what you wanted to do, right from day one. It was I want to work in TV.
Yeah, I remember I was in high school, and I remember very clearly the day my English teacher said that there was a degree you could get in communications where you could study television. And I literally thought he was kidding. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, you could go to school for 4 years and study TV and they let you do that? Some mindless person has said this is okay to do?
It sounds better than Pythagoras' theorem, right?
It is ridiculous. I literally couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I did not believe it. I said, you must be joking, sir. It doesn't make any sense, or everyone would do this. And he was like, no, there's a major. It's called, you know, in the US, it's called communications or something like that. And you can actually get a degree and learn about television. I was standing next to my friend Garrett, and Garrett and I looked at each other and we're like, well, that seems like what we should do if that is real. And so I went to American University in Washington, D.C. They gave us this tour of the campus and it was great. And on the tour, there was this big, giant, big building with this enormous tower outside. And as we walked by, the tour guide said something like, oh, that's our television studio. I've actually never been in there, was what the tour guide said, something like that. That caught my attention. So, I couldn't believe that, oh, shoot, there's a something called a television studio here at this particular school. And after the tour, my dad said, do you want to go just check out that studio? I said, yes. And we literally just walked in the door, and they were in the middle of shooting a game show in this old studio with old, rusty equipment, cameras, a switcher, that kind of thing. And I couldn't believe, I was like, you guys have a game show? It was called The Roommate Game, similar to the Newlywed Game. And I was transfixed all right away. And I think I made the decision to go to American in that moment. And so at American, I worked on The Roommate Game for a while. Then that kind of disappeared. I worked on what was called the 10 o'clock news. And then I started a late night talk show called Midnight with Dave Noll, and did that for 2 years. And so I just thoroughly enjoyed, and I didn't even realize I was doing this. My favorite part was creating the show.
Who's the audience for this show? Was it just university campus students, or did it go wider?
We started my junior year, of college, my third year of college. And that year it was just on campus. And I would get, guests. It started off just guests from around the campus, the one of the main guys on the basketball team, or the president of the student council, or whatever, or some professors who just wrote a book or whatever. And then I was able to get it that second year, so my final year, my senior year, on DC public access, because we had all these episodes at this point. We were pumping out an original episode every Tuesday night. And so by the end, we were able to get some actual political guests. We were able to get some actual TV guests, nothing major. But the crazy part about the story is that I was able to build it, but I only did it for 2 years. My brother, who is 4 years younger and insanely funny and is just naturally very, very gifted, but also works very hard at being very talented. He came in his freshman year. So he when I left, he came in and became the co-host. My co-host took over as the host. My brother, Chris, became the co-host. Then his sophomore year, he took over as host, and it became a 10 times better show. So it taught me that if you can create something in television and work hard to build it, it can actually become a thing. His show was literally seen all over DC. People talked about it. People wrote about it. And then the crazy part was then I started working as I say, at MTV Networks. And once Chris left, he had done, say, 100 episodes. We put clips together, pitched that show to MTV, almost got it on MTV. It was very, very close to 10 episodes at MTV. Didn't get it. Heartbreaking. I went about my business, my day job. I was producing at VH1 at that point. Chris started getting commercials. He started getting movie roles, but, small stuff. And then we pitched it to Comedy Central, 7, 8 years, or maybe 10. After I created it, we got it on Comedy Central, and it was called, they renamed it. It was called The Chris Wilde Show, because he had to change his name when he went to Hollywood. So they called it The Chris Wilde Show starring Chris Wilde. And we got a pilot. We then got it to series, and we got 10 episodes. And that, to me, was the magic of flipping television. Here's a thing I created with a couple of friends in college. And then 10 years later, we're in this enormous soundstage, and they're building the set. And then in the next room, in this enormous empty soundstage, there's this huge U-shaped group of tables. And at the head was my brother and me, the creators of the show and the host of the show. And we're passing notes back and forth. There's all these very serious people there, very professional, very talented people. Obviously, a lot of money was on the line, and we're passing notes back and forth. I wrote something like, wow, this is good times. He crossed that out and he said, this is great times. And that has held with me my entire career. The thought of, if you're working in television, if you're creating TV, if you're trying to bring entertainment, education, information to the masses, just keep in mind the whole goal isn't just to have a good time. The goal is to have a flipping great time. That's hard to do many days. Justin, it's hard many, many days. And so you have to kind of wake up and go, today's the day. Today's the day we're going to create the next gigantic hit show. Today's the day we're going to pitch a show that will last for 1,000 episodes and 10 years, and there's going to be versions all over the world. Obviously, it doesn't usually happen that way, but that is the goal every single day.
But that's persistence, right? You're talking about persistence there. Obviously, creativity and the ability to come up with a neat format and a neat idea, but also persistence, because every TV producer has got to have that in buckets, right?
You got people say, how do you sell so many shows? How do you get so many shows on the air? So far, my partner, Cleve, who I met in 2003, and she's just absolutely brilliant. She's just I describe her as a popcorn popper of amazing show ideas. She's that good. She is the Mozart of unscripted TV show creation. I am convinced. So we met in 2003, And together we've sold 200 plus shows. We've gotten over 60 on the air, 3,500 episodes of TV. People say, it's literally the only magic is doing it every day. And that's where it's tenacity, it's persistence. And as I say, it's this kind of overwhelming positivity in the face of constant rejection, like almost insane positivity. And so Cleve and I are constantly, I mean, we do it this morning. Like, as soon as I woke up, I was like, hey, here's what I was thinking. She's texting me in the middle of the night. I'm texting her in the middle of the night. We talk constantly. What about this? What about this? Hey, I just watched the Super Bowl. This commercial. Is this a show? We were talking about that other show. What's this? And it's all about, you have all these ideas, all these thoughts. We're in the middle of it right now. And then multiple times a year, 5-6 times a year, we do what we call a pitch push. It's a campaign. We have all these ideas. We've gotten it down. This is where we are in the process today. We've gotten it down to 5 shows. There are 5 wildly different shows. One is a cooking competition. One is a wildly new way to do a dance show. One is a insane new way to do a relationship show. One's this bizarre comedy show in a car. And you have these ideas. And now what we have to do is say, okay, let's look through all the notes from all of our meetings in the last 3 months. Let's look through all of the information that we've gotten from Real Screen, Deadline, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, shows like yours. Our agents give us notes. Here's what they've heard. So you're putting together all of that research, all of that information, and you're looking at your 5 shows and you're going, well, what's going to sell? What's the thing that's going to sell? And then you reach out to as many buyers as possible. It's as, I don't know, was it Wayne Gretzky who was like, it's all about the shots on goal.
Yeah.
Great shots on goal.
Yeah.
So right now we're in the middle of, we have these 5 shows. What right now is going to be the likely thing that sells?
So you focus on the one. So you're saying that out of those 5 shows, you've taken all of that intelligence that you get from the trade press, from your agent, and then you're putting your best efforts between one idea and focusing on that? Or are you pushing 5 at the same time and having 5 different conversations with different broadcasters?
It's really both. You push one show, that's the campaign for February and March. And then those conversations, though, lead to many other things. In any given month, say we pitch 20 times. Is that true? Maybe 15. In any given month, on average, it's 15 times. It's probably less in some months. It's less in August. It's less in December. But on average, because I think last year we pitched somewhere over 150. So that, yeah, like 15, 20 times a month. And if you were there for those pitches, it's all different shows. So even though that campaign hits, where we reach out and say, hey, this is the ultimate new performance competition. No one's ever done anything like this before. We want to pitch you this. Those discussions inevitably lead to other things. And, you're talking to them, they pass for whatever reason, or you and I were just at Real Screen. I had 19 pitches at Real Screen. They were slightly different. They were much more about, it's the beginning of the year. Where do you see your network, your streamer, your whatever? Where do you see it going for 2023? So that led to all these other conversations. And if we're going to go out and pitch the big, giant, sexy relationship show, we're probably not going to pitch that to Nickelodeon. So you're in that discussion with Nickelodeon, you're talking about other things. We're probably not going to pitch that show to the Food Network. In those discussions, you pitch some other things. So there's one main, if you look at our list of pitches, which by date, there's one main show that you'll see a lot in that month. But then you'll be like, oh my gosh, in this month, you pitched 20 different shows. How do you keep them all in your head? I don't know. You just do.
Yeah.
You study before the pitch, and then you pitch like your life depends on it every single time. That's another goal.
You're pitching predominantly to US cable networks and streamers, I guess anybody who buys TV shows, right? In New York or in Washington or in LA.
Exactly. We're pitching mostly here. In the past, we have gone to MIP many times and pitched all over the world. I think because of Zoom, it's going to go back in that direction. At one point, we worked for Barry Diller, billionaire. He started the Fox network. He greenlit The Simpsons, Tracy Ullman, Married with Children. He is a billionaire genius, just an absolute genius. As I say, in my entire career, the 20 smartest things I've ever heard, he probably said 15 of them or 16 of them. When we worked for him, he basically was like, your goal shouldn't be any show. At that point, before Diller, we would sell anything. You know, we were working on docu-soaps and documentaries, one-offs, specials. And he was just like, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. What you and Cleve have the ability to do is create the next Wheel of Fortune, create the next Come Dine With Me, the next Money Drop, the next Got Talent. Stop doing anything else. And he said, only pitch me shows from now on. I don't want to hear any show ever without a obvious, clear path to over $100 million globally. And his vision breaks your brain when you work with him. Your brain breaks. And so that has been our focus ever since. And so he used to put us, you've been to MIP, he would get a yacht and we would pitch game shows on the yacht. You know, you'd have breakfast and then you'd start pitching 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30, 12, 12:30. You break for lunch, 2, 2:30, 3:30. And it was amazing. And we sold a lot of shows that way. It was absolutely amazing. But that whole thing taught us, about the enormous value of a great television show. And it also taught us the enormous value of getting on the plane, pitching everyone around the world. When we left working with Diller, since then we've done less of that because it's expensive to rent the yacht. I feel like now we're going to start pitching more. We've done it, but we're going to start pitching more in the UK, in Scandinavia, in France, at least to those production companies. Are you looking for this? Are you looking for this? Because maybe we have.
In terms of your career, you talked about you were at MTV, you were at VH1, you mentioned. So was that the extent of your career from a broadcaster perspective? Did you go anywhere else after that, or did you go straight into developing formats and programs with Cleve on your own?
It was 7 years there at the network. And literally, I didn't even really know. You know, the crazy thing about TV, right, is it's not that big of a world, but there's so many different jobs. There's so many different ways to sell. There's so many different types of creators, types of people. I didn't even know there was such a thing as an unscripted show creator. You know, whatever. I was just a kid and working and trying to produce whatever they told me to produce. A lot of Celine Dion specials. That was my beat for like a year or two. But I was a person who just naturally kept saying, well, what if we did this? Or what about this show? Or this works. What if we did this? And I got a couple shows on there. And my boss at the time, the great Bill Brand, who I will forever thank every time I see him, Bill called me into his office one day and he basically said, look, you're not doing this the right way. He was like, you're creating these shows internally. And if one hits, I was getting shows on the air and they were doing well, or specials or whatever. And they were doing very well. He was like, if one hits, it doesn't really help you. You might get a bit of a raise, but you probably won't. Like that, the way the corporate structure works, you know, you might get a bonus at the end of the year or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, weird. And then he says, the way to do it, what you should be doing is pitching from the outside. These specials, these shows, if you pitch them from the outside, then you can build your own shows. You can build your own production company. And so I went home. We had this long conversation in his office. And then I went home and I said to my wife, either Bill Brand is giving me the best advice of my life ever, and he's pointing me in a new direction, or he just came up with the most amazing way to get rid of me. That is entirely possible. I literally didn't know. It's possible. He's trying to get rid of me. And he did it in a genius way. I was manipulated. I didn't understand. And my wife, to her credit, was like, no, I think he's right. I believe she liked Bill Brand. And she was like, I think he's right. And I think you should do this. So that started me on this journey of creating shows from the outside. And I think that was 2001, 2002. And Cleve came into my office to pitch. At that point, I would just take pitches from anybody. She came into my office to pitch in 2003. And she had created what I thought was just the most brilliant show I'd ever heard. I couldn't believe it. It was all so good. And I thought to myself, she might be the smartest person I've ever talked to. I took so many pitches those first 2 years. Comedians, producers, writers, executives, anyone who would pitch me. Because I had gotten a couple deals. So like I got an early deal at VH1 and an early deal, I think, at Nickelodeon and maybe something at MTV or whatever. And so people were like, oh, this guy Dave Noll's taking pitches and he's selling some things. And so Cleve walks in and I literally was like, I think I can sell that in one phone call. And I sold it in one phone call. I called my friend Vlad Wolinets, brilliant, at AMC, and I sold the show to Vlad. And it took me years after that. I kept saying to her, come work with me, come work with me. And she was a producer and she was like, no, I'm a producer. And finally in 2007, I was like, I'm not going to call you again, darn it, which was a lie. I would have definitely called her again. And I said, I'm not going to call you again. You need to come work with me. And so we've been working together ever since.
I suppose one of your best known formats is called Chopped. Tell us about Chopped. Tell us how that show came together and tell us what kind of show it is. I'm sure people have come across it, but in case they haven't, tell us a little bit about it.
Chopped is a standalone, self-contained cooking competition, 1 hour, where there's 4 chefs and 3 judges. They each cook an appetizer. There is a basket of ingredients. They have no idea. So they open this basket of ingredients and they cook. And then one is eliminated. The person who cooks what our judges say is the worst appetizer, that chef is eliminated. That chef is chopped. And so now there's 3 chefs left. They each cook a main course. At the end of that, 1 chef is chopped. Now there's 2 chefs left. It's the dessert round, appetizer, main course, dessert. And 1 chef is chopped and 1 wins $10,000. So this was back, I don't know, 2006, 2007. Cleve and I were in New York and we were working with this guy, Mike Krupat, who is still in TV, still creating formats, based in LA. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant dude. And I was about to pitch Charles Norlander at the Food Network. If anybody's ever met Charles Norlander, what you know about Charles Norlander, he's crazy smart, he's crazy intimidating, he's always better dressed than everybody else. We used to call him the Wizard because he had these circular glasses and he looked like a wizard. And he was really smart. And so I was on the phone with Mike and I said, I've got this pitch coming up in a couple days and I don't like whatever we have, whatever. And at that point in time, Mike and I were obsessed with this trashy show called Eliminate. Not that we love trashy television, but we were obsessed with the format. And Mike and I, Cleve creates in this insane way. As I say, she's a popcorn popper. She's a fireworks display. She's a bam, and it's like it's amazing what comes out of her brain. Mike and I would say, are much more analyzers. We dissect things. It's more cerebral, I guess. So we were obsessed with this format called Eliminate, where it was a woman, again, standalone show. She was dating 4 guys. Over the course of the date, she would eliminate one after another until there was 2 left. And then she would eliminate one, she would pick the other one, and then they would jump into a jacuzzi together and fall in love. And I'm sure, spend a lifetime together. No, they would jump into a jacuzzi together. It was a very kind of naughty, trashy show. But we loved that format. And so on the call, Mike said, well, what if we were calling them 4-3-2-1s. And now, at least in the US, people refer to shows like Chopped as a 4-3-2-1. Back in the day, Mike and I were that's a term we created. Oh, it's a 4-3-2-1. Maybe we could do a 4-3-2-1 for Court TV. Maybe we could do a 4-3-2-1 for MTV. Maybe we could do a 4-3-2-1 for Discovery. What would that look like? So Mike says, well, what if we did a 4-3-2-1 for Food Network? Sometimes shows take years, like especially a game show takes sometimes years to get the right title, the right second act, the right bonus, whatever it is. This show basically came together in 5-10 minutes. Mike was like, what if it's, and I was like, oh my gosh, Mike, that's amazing. That's so brilliant. There's 3 judges. There's a host, 4 chefs, 3 competitions, 3. And at that point, there was this big show called Iron Chef. But what we knew is that Iron Chef, only having one competition, got boring in the middle. In the middle acts, you were kind of like, all right, let's get to it. And Americans, no attention span. So we were like, it's like Iron Chef, right? Like, but there's 4 chefs, 3 competitions. Unbelievable. And then Mike was like, oh, 3 competitions. It should be appetizer, main course, dessert. And I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. This is mind blowing. And then I knew in fancy restaurants, I didn't know what it was called, but I knew they had these silver domes and they would lift it to reveal the food. I think I only knew that from Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Yeah.
I now know it's called a cloche.
Cloche.
But anyway,
that's right.
I said, those silver domes like on Bugs Bunny, that's how they eliminate. They lift it, and the eliminated meal is under that silver dome. Oh my God, Mike, they've been chopped. The show's called Chopped. And we were so thrilled. And I remember floating into Food Network that day with an excitement. I loved the line, this new show is Iron Chef meets Eliminate. I thought that was weird and clever, and no one had ever said those words before. And I knew Charles Norlander. I'm sure, I knew he knew what Eliminate was, but he was such like an intelligent human being. I also knew that he probably never watched Eliminate, right? Like, I'm kind of trashy. He's not. And so I go in and I say to Charles, how are you? He's asking what we're doing. And I was like, Charles, I've got this cooking competition. I'm so excited. It's standalone episodes. It's called Chopped. And just think of it as Iron Chef meets Eliminate. And he smiled right away. He smiled. You could just see the wheels start to turn. And then he's like, tell me more. And I said, well, there's 4 chefs and they each cook an appetizer. They have no idea what they're about to cook. And then they have to cook an appetizer. One is eliminated. They've been chopped. And then what's great, it's very rare, but when you're pitching a format that's original and then the person you're pitching gets it and you don't have to even finish the show, that is an amazing moment. And it's hard to do. It's just one of these things you're looking for. In this particular case, it had a title that was great immediately, and it had a hook. Also, he knew more than I did. He knew that Iron Chef would lose viewers halfway through. So it worked. So now we just crossed 950 episodes across the franchise. So there was Chopped Canada, Chopped Sweets, Chopped Junior. There's a great version in Dubai right now. It's amazing. It's a flipping great show.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. My favorite show.
Yeah, well, it's an incredible success. Now, you've won 2 Emmys. Tell us what those are for.
Like years ago, as I say, when we were doing lots of different kind of stuff, we did a documentary on the life of Johnny Cash. It was amazing. I loved it, and we won an Emmy. And then crazy, one of the early digital Emmys, I think it was like the first year they gave them out, or this, I don't know, second, whatever. We did a show called Book Obsessed, and our partner was Barnes & Noble. It aired on Barnes & Noble 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So you would go to barnesandnoble.com and you could buy books, and then there were shows that they had, similar to kind of to what Tastemade is doing now and a lot of sites are doing now. But Barnes & Noble way ahead of time. And so we did a show called Book Obsessed, and each episode, the whole hook was there are people who like books, there are people who love books, and then there are the book obsessed. So it was kind of like hoarders for books. And then you met these weird, crazy people who their house was just full of books. Like one guy had to cut the legs off of his dining room table. His wife was not happy because he didn't know where to put the books, so he stacked the books, and they were the legs of his dining room.
Oh my God, that sounds such a nightmare.
Yeah.
But great characters, right? Which is what
exactly right.
Many people in TV crave, and we heard a lot of that at Real Screen, didn't we? Everybody's going back to looking for crazy characters in the backwoods of Canada or whatever,
What's old is new again.
Yeah.
I was on a panel where the executives, the commissioners were saying, pitch us stuff that you created 10 years ago, because there's this hunger now for 2 things, especially in the US. Big audiences, even niche places now want the biggest possible audience. Even if they're focused on women, they want the men too. A lot of places, they want the kids too or whatever. And then they want hooks. They want, if you're Netflix, you have all these tiles. You need a tile that people are going to click on. And then once they click on it, you need that promo. Is It Cake is a great example. Love is Blind, you need a hook where people are going to go, I have to watch that. I have to see what this is about.
Are we talking about a new wave of sort of immediacy, if you like? Do you think that the streamers are changing the game when it comes to TV formats in the same way that short form content, it's about getting those messages in the first frame? We talked to Brandon B on the show last week, and he was talking about the way that digital first content has moved from the early days of YouTube, which was the first minute or first couple of minutes. So you've got to get the concept, which has become shorter and shorter as more short form content has become popular, like stuff on Snapchat and Reels and YouTube Shorts now. It's about getting the first frame. Do you see that relating to longer form shows that streamers are now commissioning? Do you think that still holds true?
I think it's 90% of television. They're asking for existing IP. They're asking for unscripted. They're asking for big, giant adventures. What you want is shows that will hook not a TV audience, that will hook a TikTok audience instantly. What is it? Is it dragons roasting people? Is it sex? Is it euphoria? Is it Zendaya, right? What about this show? Is it Meryl Streep joining Only Murders in the Building? What about this show, whether it's scripted or unscripted? What about this show is so hooky and addictive instantly? Masked Singer. I'll say this. When Masked Singer came to the US, no one thought that was going to work. No one. We had meeting after meeting where people made fun of Fox, except, God bless her, Cleve Keller, who I work with, heard about the show, found some version, and called me and was like, this is going to be a monster hit. And I was like, you're crazy. No one thinks it's good. It's crazy. It's people in a giant fluffy costume. What are you talking about? And they're not going to get big stars. It's like C-level stars. Who cares? She's like, Dave, I watched 10 minutes. She's like, obviously, it's from another country. I didn't know who these people were. And I was still trying to guess. It's going to be a smash hit. And that's why, right? It has the sizzle of some enormous celebrity could be behind this crazy flamingo costume. And then it has the sizzle, the steak. It has the steak, there's the hook, but then also there's this through line of you can't not guess. You have to guess. I defy anyone to flip that show on 5 minutes in, 25 minutes in, whatever, and not try to guess. I've seen it happen with family members who would be like, I would never watch this show. They guess. When the show's on, they guess. It's amazing. So that, to me, is what everyone's looking for. What is the big, splashy, eye-popping, as I say, TikTok-style hook that you've never seen? And then, though, does it pay off? Can you see 100 episodes, 1,000 episodes? And that's where, as a show creator, you really have to work. What is the hook that you have to watch? And then, though, is your show just a hook and then no one's going to watch 6 episodes? I don't want to trash anybody else's show, so I am not going to. But plenty of shows recently in the last 5 years have had this great hook, and then you're watching and you're like, this ain't making it to episode 6. No one's going to watch this thing. It has a hook, but it doesn't have an episode 2. Like, there's no compelling reason for me to stay.
And obviously, US networks are famously pretty brutal when it comes to if it's not working. You might start the series intending to go to 8 episodes, but actually, if it's not working after 4, it's off, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it is. And that's why when we bring out a show, again, like, our whole focus is 1,000 episodes, and people think we're crazy. Network executives definitely think we're crazy often. We will not bring a show to anyone unless we see, obviously, you could do 1,000 of these. That's our goal.
You've got a book coming out, or is it out already, called The Visionary in Charge?
It does not have a date yet. It comes out in either April or May. If anyone is interested at all, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn as soon as there's a date. I post all the time. I post all the time about what I've learned in TV, what amazing people have taught me. And as soon as that date is announced, I will post that date a lot.
All right.
Visionary in Charge is really, what happened was during the pandemic, I started posting on LinkedIn. And some of the stuff obviously didn't work. And then some of the stuff people were really interested in. And so I started just gaining a lot of connections, a lot of followers of people in the industry, but all across the industry, voiceover people, writers, people who want to be directors, people who want to work in TV, whatever it is. And so I would just write, here's what I've learned. Here's what I learned from Barry Diller. Here's what I learned when I worked with Celine Dion. Here's what I learned when I worked with Tom Cruise. Here's what I learned when I did a special with Roy Disney. He told me stories about Walt. Here's everything I've learned. And so at one point, a publisher reached out and said, people are really weirdly responding to this. You should write a book. And I said, great, how does that work? And so it's called The Visionary in Charge. I broke everything down. And anything I learned, I put on a colored note card. And I had all these stories of working with all these people. And then stories I've heard along the way, stories about Oprah, stories about Stephen King, stories about Walt Disney, like all these things. And I put them on all these colored note cards. And what happened was you realize there's patterns. It's the same story over and over again. Something that happened to Walt Disney, in the 50s, then happened to Oprah in the 80s or 90s. And then it matches exactly a story that happened to me when I worked with Barry Diller. The people at the highest levels of television or entertainment, they all have learned the same thing. And so they're just trying to teach you the same thing. Walt, Oprah, Diller, Stephen King, it's the same stories over and over again. And so I whittled it down to 7 rules. So it's The Visionary in Charge, 7 simple rules, because just one extraordinary idea can change your life. In entertainment, certainly, but in anything, entrepreneurs, business, one extraordinary idea can definitely change your life. And yet what you need to know is how to cultivate that idea, how to work that idea, how to sell that idea, and how to bring it to life. And so that's what the book attempts to show. And it should just be also an infusion of inspiration, motivation, creativity, and positivity.
All right. Dave, I'd love you to come back on the show when it's been published and maybe read an extract from it or do a chapter from it or something like that, whatever you fancy. How does that sound?
I would love it. I'd be honored. And I would love to just come back and talk to you about new formats and new TV whenever you wish.
And now it's time for Story of the Week, where my guests get to nominate their content industry news that's caught the eye in the past 7 days. So, Dave, tell us about your Story of the Week.
All right. Maybe I cheated a little. All right. But I may have cheated just a little. But what I've noticed lately in television, especially in the US, maybe all over, is a negativity, a growing negativity. Pandemic related, definitely.
It's not surprising, right? It's not surprising when we've seen that, like, Discovery have hardly commissioned any shows in the last year, and all these mergers and the impact the mergers are having on producers. I can understand why people are a bit pissed off.
And the impact mergers are having on executives, obviously, who all of a sudden have a new job, all of a sudden have a new boss, or all of a sudden don't have a job. So there's this kind of negativity, and you definitely saw it, I'm sure, when you went to Real Screen. I had meeting after meeting, and I was like, and so what I did when you said, take a look at the news, the entertainment, the television news in the US over the course of the last week, as I say, I cheated a little. What I started noticing was, even though, yes, there's this negativity, and yes, I totally get it. We lost a ton of shows, a ton of deals in the last couple of years because of these mergers. But what I noticed is there's so much good news, especially just looking at the basic stuff from 2022. If you look at the top 15 streaming series of 2022, so these are gigantic shows. This is Stranger Things, right? These are the top 15 streaming shows. Number 8 is Love is Blind. And I'm just like, There is a straight down the middle, great title, great hook, well-produced show. Could go for hundreds of episodes. It's a success story that people really don't talk about as much as they talk about Stranger Things, Wednesday, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Number 12 is the Great British Baking Show. That's unbelievable, right? It's a cooking competition. It's over the course of a season. But what they did was it's one of the most beautiful shows. It's a reach through the TV and grab that cake show. And yet it's the overwhelming positivity of that show. I've watched a season and you get sad at the end that it's over. You're like, I just want to be with these people and hang out. If you look at the top 3 entertainment shows in the US from fall of 2022, all 3 are unscripted. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 1 was The Bachelorette on ABC. Number 2 was Survivor on CBS. Number 3 was Big Brother on CBS. Unscripted to me is, yes, I love Stranger Things. I love House of the Dragon. There's so many scripted shows that I love. But unscripted, man, is where gigantic, decade-long hits. That's where it is. People say there's a lot of money in TV. True. Diller taught us this ages ago. Barry Diller, who we worked with. Long after these kind of like blips are gone, long after Game of Thrones is gone, long after these massive Seinfeld, whatever, these scripted shows that come and go, Got Talent is still going to be producing episodes somewhere. Wheel of Fortune is still, Family Feud, Family Fortune. There's these unscripted shows that Great British Baking Show, that could go on forever. It's an amazing show. And I want to remind people that the 3 biggest entertainment shows in the US in the fall were The Bachelorette, Survivor, and Big Brother. That's among the, 18 to 49-year-olds or whatever. That was the good news, I think. There's still big, gigantic shows.
So we're looking at potentially a writer's strike in LA at the moment. Do you think that could potentially have a benefit for unscripted commissioning? Do you think that's realistic?
What's amazing about television, and even specifically unscripted television, is almost anything affects it positively. And this is, again, because I've been doing it now for 20 years. When there's a writer's strike, they lean on unscripted TV executives to come up with new stuff. When there's a recession, some buyers can't afford scripted shows anymore. And yet in a recession, more people watch TV than when there's not a recession. They're stuck inside doing nothing. So you lean on unscripted executives. In a pandemic, it was stunning to me when people were like, well, we're not going to greenlight shows. It's like everyone's sitting at home. Greenlight shows. And you felt it. There was a wave where everyone was kind of unsure. And then a wave where, I think it was 2021, whatever it was, we sold 10 shows in like 6 months, whatever. Like, it was just an overwhelming wave of, oh, shoot, everyone's sitting at home. We can't afford scripted shows. We need unscripted shows. So I just have noticed in the last 20 years, all of these things lead to positive things for unscripted executives or unscripted, anyone who works in unscripted TV.
And Dave, now it's time for you to nominate your hero of the week and tell us who or what you're telling to get in the bin. So first of all, who's your hero of the week?
Hero of the week. And it's not because I'm on with you. It's not like you asked me hero of the week. This is not, I'm not pandering to your audience, but we just had a major event here in the US. It was called the Super Bowl. It is still the biggest thing that happens every year. 100 million, whatever it was. And a big deal in the US is who gets that slot after the Super Bowl, because everyone's watching it. And on the East Coast, it ends at 10 or whatever. On the West Coast, it ends at 7. In the middle of the country, it ends at 8. It is a very big deal who gets that slot. And flipping Gordon Ramsay gets the slot. It's unbelievable. Next Level Chef. I've never worked with Gordon, but the 3 stars of that show are Gordon Ramsay, Richard Blais, and Naisha Arrington. I've worked with Blaze and with Naisha, who are just two of the greatest people I've ever worked with. And they are television stars and culinary stars. So my hero is Gordon, next level chef. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, who are you chucking in the bin?
Who's in the bin? Negativity. And I know it's just, let's stop. If you've been laid off, I totally understand. And you can be negative. Everybody else, there's still 30 or 40 US buyers. There's always been 30 or 40 US buyers. Buyers come, buyers go. But there's going to be gigantic unscripted hits this year. There's always 2 or 3 that take off and last for decades. Negativity's in the bin. Positivity's in. Let's all create something awesome and be proud of it.
All right, Dave. Well, that's a perfect note to end on as we look forward to the rest of the year. Thank you so much for coming on TellyCast. It's been fantastic having a chat with you. We could go on. We could do a part 2 and a part 3, right? So there's
who knows as much about TV and formats. It's unbelievable, as you do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Will we see you at MIP TV, or where will we see you in the UK or in Europe next?
I hope to be at MIP TV.
Well, we might see you at on the Croisette then in a few weeks' time. It'd be great if we do. Dave, thanks so much. All the best.
Awesome.
Well, that's about it for this week's TellyCast. As always, thanks a lot for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share it with friends and colleagues on social media. This week's show was recorded in London and edited, as always, by Ian Chambers. Until next week, stay safe.